Good evening everyone, welcome to the Strategy Group meeting. The first item on is minutes of the last meeting held on the 28th of May 2015. Are you happy I'll sign this off as a correct record? Thank you. Apologies for absence. I'm sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, I had my hand up. I wondered whether you wanted to change the resolution about property event to...
Sorry, my apologies.
But it was going to involve senior officers and administration members of the strategy group. Thank you. Your advice, pages before 15. SG 34.
Yes, sorry, I do apologise for that. I'm going to follow that. On the item on page, second page, 3415, Council Development Charter, we did say we have a top team event involving senior officers and strategy group members. It should obviously be administration strategy group members because it's an administration meeting. I have apologised profusely to Abigail because obviously I had actually invited Abigail to go along to that meeting, but I was wrong in doing so because it's actually an administration function. But obviously I'm more than happy to meet Abigail outside of that meeting anyway for any ideas you may have to contribute. I know you would hate to be in a room full of conservatives on your own.
I was looking forward to it, you may.
I do apologise, yes. So
it's just pedantic procedural point, but can I just suggest that's narrative rather than changing of the resolution, because that's what was actually agreed at the meeting. So the narrative can explain the situation.
Thank you, Mr. Duke. Thank you. Thank you, Abigail. Sorry, apologies for absence.
Councillors Wayne Howard, Colin Morgan and Nigel Carr.
Thank you. No. Declarations of members' interests. Further now, if not at the time of the item, we move on to our first substantive item tonight, which is access and communication issues, community engagement strategy 2015 to 2020. In Councillor Howard's absence, Councillor Griffin's going to take this paper.
Unfortunately, Councillor Howard has been in Hartlepool all day and he can't get back, which is a shame because obviously this is his portfolio. But if you look on page 19, he's written a very good foreword to the community engagement strategy. Page 19, and I think it does say everything he would want to say if he was here. I trust members may support the proposed community engagement strategy as it has been refreshed by the changes proposed by the consultation. Para 4 gives a breakdown of proposed changes, and one in particular attracts my attention. This is to develop a youth arm to the People's Panel. I'm sure Councillor Hills will be interested in this and to the suggestion that this can be done electronically. I did note Daventry calling wasn't mentioned often, but would say to members that this excellent publication goes to all homes district-wide and informs and signposts and generally encourages engagement. And I would also commend to members the work of Becky Hudson, Community and Marketing Manager, and Ian O'Cray, Communication Officer. In my role in HR, I feel entitled to make that comment. We're all in this together, including us members. Page 23 tells us why we engage and why this should be done well. Informed, consulting, involved is a continuing process, building on what we already do, and as always, seeking to improvement. We never sort of sit back and think things can stay the same. We're always moving on and looking to do better. I do hope members will resolve that this strategy can be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Griffin. Comments, questions? Councillor Hills.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment following Councillor Griffin's comments. Access and communication, community engagement, I believe, is a vital part of what we should be doing. Because quite frankly, without engaging with the public, how are we to know and to gain information that we need? Very interested in that this can be done digitally, because quite frankly, we're at an age where the younger people, that's their way of communicating these days, and we should be looking to encourage not just those of the older age group, but to encourage our younger people as well. So I think that is a step forward in the right direction. I'd just like to refer finally to page 23, where it lists, it says the community engagement helps the council too. I'm not going to go through every item, but you can see in ways that if you can do this, that it will help. And it said the local community will have a greater say and choice in the design and delivery of local services, develop new skills and expertise, and that includes digital, and be better informed about the council's work. So I certainly support this paper and hope that we can take it forward again.
Councillor Young, with that, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, Chairman. I welcome this, and I think it's appropriate that it is refreshed in this way. However, I've got one or two little items in relation to it. I'm glad that we're looking at new methods of engaging with the public. What I think there is, where I think there's a gap, is where, in fact, on page 14, it refers to the third objective being amended to ensure the communication of outcomes, and the fourth bullet point where it refers to unless the change is driven by a legal requirement, government directive, whatever. Now, it does seem to me, if we're talking about this engagement strategy, when in fact we're going to have a strap line which talks about inform, that in fact we can't leave out altogether from the document and from the requirement actually to inform people when there are directions from government or changes in legislation. And I'd like to see that more explicitly within the strategy. I'm absolutely right. We shouldn't be consulting on it because we've got no say over it whatsoever. But I think we ought to make it clear somewhere in the document that there is an obligation upon us, if things are going to impact on our communities, that in fact we have a means of telling people about it.
That's a fair point. Simon, you want to come to that point?
Chairman, I'm sure we're going to have a few words. I must apologise, actually, it actually says page 9 in the bullet point, it's actually page 8, or page 24 if you prefer the strategy page numbering. I'm sure we could have a sentence at the end of the paragraph after the bullet point list which says effectively we're building forward to be clear in those occasions.
I think that would be a good...
Very helpful. Thanks for your contribution, Councillor. Thank you, Simon. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to talk, Chair. Well, after reading through this report, the document is satisfactory, but from the evidence of the responses from those people who gave their time to respond to the consultation, I actually feel that their concerns have not been addressed, and sometimes I feel it's almost like, it's just noted. If people...
Go on specifically, you're thinking of, Frank?
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the very first one, a little less business jargon, well, that hasn't got noted, but more plain words, and obviously, it's a consultation to the public, yeah. And then it says the main audience intended is council officers and elected members. But obviously, the best consultations that people respond to are the ones that are the easiest to respond to. And often, when we do a consultation, there's an alternative.
But just saying that same bit there, Wendy, that 90% of response communicated before it's clear and concise.
It does, and we've got 61 responses.
Yeah,
so 61 responses out of 26,000 people. I don't know what that percentage is, but it's a very low percentage. And some councils, if you look across them in different areas, their consultations are very, what I'd call their smart consultations. They're very engaging. You really feel like they're listening to what the people are saying, and they respond back well. And their response rate is huge because they fully engage people. I mean, is this something that we really do want to take on board what the people think, or is it more of just a tick box exercise? I think we could be, I think we could be really, really smart with our consultation. I think we could really engage more. That, the questions, just very short to the point, and if they don't take very long to answer, you've got much more chance of people engaging.
Thank you. Next one, Councillor Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. Obviously, the subject is quite dear to my heart. Very difficult to engage with people that don't want to engage. However, it's a case of horses to water. I do partially agree with Councillor Randall. However, the fact of the matter is that we are moving forward in an electronic age. Our website is increasing the use or customer use of the web, self-help, etc. Apps for smartphones, Facebook, Twitter, all coming on board, but Councillor Randall said 26,000 people. Well, we're talking about 76,000 people in the district, not just town-centric. One important document that is actually delivered to every household in the district is Daventry Calling. There are opportunities within Daventry Calling to raise subjects which are dear, but the biggest and most important way of getting the message out is through the 36 councillors that we have within this council. And it's often said, well, we don't know who the councillors are, and we're happy, or we don't know how to engage. Well, I have to compliment Councillor Randall. She certainly knows how to engage. I think we changed the Daventry Express to the Randall Express at the moment. However, one comment that she made in the Dav Express about fountains at the November 20th strategy meeting, I've been all through the minutes and I can't find reference to that. So I think we've got to be careful what we say and when we say it. But I have no problem whatsoever, Chairman, of recommending this, and I hope your committee will approve it, purely and simply because we have one of the best communications team. If I take on board Morton College, the Northampton County Council, and even the borough, I think ours is second to none, Chairman. I hope your members will approve this.
Thanks to you, Councillor Paul. And Councillor Chanter.
Thank you, Chairman. Just draw attention to the so-called ladder of participation, which is on page 22 or 6, depending on which end of the page you look at. And it talks about going from informing to empowerment.
Yeah.
In the description of empowerment, it says places the final decision-making in the hands of the community. I think we really need to be cautious and make sure that all members are aware and keep in mind the fact that there are certain decisions that this council makes which cannot be placed in the hands of the community. I refer particularly to the quasi-judicial decisions made by the Licensing and Planning Committee.
Yeah, most of the community is represented by people in this chamber.
Indeed, but we know from recent events that people get upset when what they said, what they ought to happen, doesn't happen. It's not our fault, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. Thanks, Alan. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Lomax made my principal point very clearly and eloquently, and so I'm glad she's made that already. I had a couple of other points. Just I think, although the communications team had a lot to do with this work, it was led by Ros Kidman, Partnership Policy Officer. I just wanted to commend the work she's done. It's a very thorough job and a well-written report and a good summary, I think, of the findings. So I think she's done a lot of work. I wanted to commend that. And the other thing I think is a really important outcome is that hopefully the commitment to a resident survey, which I think is a really important, will provide us with a really important baseline of what the people of the district are thinking. I think sometimes it feels we're making decisions or recommendations in strategy group in something of a vacuum because we don't really know what people think about them until we go out and do some kind of limited consultation. So I think a 3-yearly resident survey is extremely valuable, and I'm really pleased to see that is mentioned in here.
Thank you. can tell you one thing, active ward councillors know what people are thinking, and they normally get a lot of feedback from members of the public. Normally on issues of controversy, always gets people enlightened about anything to do with councils. But those points are taken on board. Are we happy to agree with the recommendation?
Agreed.
Move on to strategic planning issues now. The first item is neighbourhood area application for Crick. Councillor Chancellor.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to go through the history of neighbourhood development plans. I think we're all familiar with that. Those of us here. The first stage in the process, of course, is that the relevant body, in this case Crick Parish Council, formally requests that planning authority designate their proposed neighbourhood area. The slight problem we have with this one is, well, there are two. One is that following a change in the rules, this particular neighbourhood plan, neighbourhood area designation falls to be resolved by this committee, not by council, because of the changes to the timetable. So council agreed in February that the authority for determination is delegated to strategy group. So bear that in mind when we come to the end, please. It's normal for a parish council to suggest a neighbourhood area which follows the parish boundary. We've had already one in the past which wasn't able to do that exactly because of dirt, which is of national and international strategic importance and therefore needs to be its own development area, if you like. So part of Crick Parish includes dirt, so that bit had to be left out. But there is also within Crick a substantial commercial development area or industrial development area which is not part of dirt. It's the other side of the motorway, and it includes what I still think of as Midland Meat Packers, only they are now the dog food and cat food company, and Costco have got an enormous building going up there. I'm looking forward to that opening, and there are other plans ahead. So one of the guidelines we receive for designating of neighbourhood development areas is that the boundaries should not be liable to change. But also, it's necessary to ensure that those people whose interests are likely to be affected by the plan, in this case in particular the interests of those on the commercial estate, should be properly represented. And so, because of that, we're hesitant at accepting and approving the Parish Council's suggestion that it should be a single neighbourhood development area, which is the whole parish minus dirt. And our suggestion is that it should be two neighbourhood development areas, the whole of the parish not including dirt and also not including the commercial development area to the east of the motorway as a neighbourhood development area, not designated as a business area, and that the part that is the commercial development to the east of the motorway should be a separate development area which should be a business area. The difference that makes is that the businesses on that business area have to be consulted about the content of that bit of the plan separately, and there has to be an extra referendum, in fact. So it's not an easy decision to make from the point of view of admin, because two neighbourhood plans obviously take up more work than a single neighbourhood plan. Two lots of consultation, two lots of public examination, two lots of referenda, in one case a single referendum, in the other case two referenda, I believe. But nevertheless, we believe that the appropriate designation in this case would be that instead of the single area that the Parish Council had suggested, that it should be designated as two areas where the substantial commercial estate is designated as a business area. We are guided by various bits of legislation and also government guidance. The Council council must have regard to any guidance issued by the Secretary of State, but this doesn't require us to follow the guidance, which is interesting. But we are obliged in general to conform with the strategic policies of the adopted development plan, in our case the joint core strategy, which makes a special mention of some of the commercial development in the area. Therefore, we are proposing that we should formally refuse the application that the Parish Council has made for a single neighbourhood area, and instead designate two neighbourhood areas which cover the same area, one of which would be for the commercial estate. We're allowed to do that. It does ensure that it is conformant with the joint core strategy and other legal and planning policy framework, and that is what we're suggesting. And I would remind you again, as it says on page 45, that this is a resolution of the strategy group, not a recommendation to council.
Okay, so presumably this will also help if any future challenge came in, legal challenge came in.
Indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. You've heard the words, Councillor Lomax.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My board, of course. Can I first of all say thank you to the officers for actually treating this application by Creek Parish Council with flexibility and good common sense, and the resolution doesn't end after line 2, but actually has come forward with a proposition to make it possible for the neighbourhood plan to go forward. I take it from what Councillor Chodron has said, that the neighbourhood plan group in Crick will still be responsible for dealing with the Crick commercial neighbourhood area, and I hope that there will be help and guidance forthcoming on this, because I don't think any other community has actually been faced with actually having to do that. And it obviously is going to require a slightly different approach and perhaps slightly different recommendations taken into consideration. So I hope that that will be forthcoming.
Thank you, Councillor Lomax. Someone wants to just clarify?
Shall I?
Please.
I have to be terribly pedantic and say, strictly speaking, that's a matter for a Crick Parish Council. One would assume, having set up the neighbourhood plan group, that they will ask it to lead on both, but strictly speaking, that's a matter for the Parish Council.
Thank you.
But certainly, we would provide advice and support as we do in other cases.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Thanks, Simon. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Can I ask the question of the strategic portfolio holder with two designated areas and the SIL being on the programme later, how, if at all, will this affect SIL by there being two neighbourhood areas in effect?
Not at all, my understanding.
Not at all.
Chairman, I elaborate just slightly. I mean, although it's absolutely right, the reason we're having the effect is, in practice, we don't expect there to be any still viable development in the Crick commercial neighbourhood area. If there was, though, and it had a neighbourhood plan, the same would apply as if there was one neighbourhood area.
Thank you. Oh, it's Councillor Warren.
Just like, is this actually going to double their cost for creating a neighbourhood plan then?
It will certainly have an effect on the cost. I wouldn't say that it doubles it, but they also know that there is funding available, and they've been exploring that, as have most of the people who've been pulling forward in that neighbourhood area. But of course, it increases the work, which will increase the cost in some form. Also, it increases our costs because we are bound to provide for the referenda and the public examination. But nevertheless, we feel that this is the best way forward in this case.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for that. Councillor Osborne.
We get it just right. Am I completely correct in thinking that this area, which actually borders the Crick village itself and is one side of the motorway, the parish council will be at no disadvantage having two separate plans than one plan?
In simple terms, yes. they are still the body responsible for both plans. The only difference is that businesses have to approve the plan for the business area, which is the mechanism Parliament provided to try and make sure that businesses are fully engaged when they take a large business area like this.
Right. Can I come back now? The only concern I would raise then, with this business area being abutting the village, right, it joins up with the village, there might be, the village might think completely different to the views of the commercial area and there could be a conflict there, I would have thought. Let's say it crept a little further and the village itself didn't want it further, but the people on the industrial estate, which touches the village anyway, did want it. Then there would be a conflict, wouldn't there?
Chairman, if I can perhaps explain.
Sorry, via you, Chairman.
What would happen if there was a situation where, for the sake of argument, one thing I would say first actually is the businesses can't change the area that's designated. Yeah, that's a fixed line, a line fixed by this council, so they can't sort of creep across the borders. So that helps. Then, if the neighbourhood planning group, as delegated by Crick Parish Council, put forward a plan and it went to referendum, it would actually ultimately be a decision for this council about who gets a vote, but probably, I would imagine, we would allow all the residents of the parish to vote in both plans and just the businesses in the area for the business plan. If the businesses and the residents vote different ways in their respective referenda, then it actually comes to this council to decide whether or not the plan should be made. So it would be a decision for members here. And I think in that circumstance, members here would look at the arguments and would form a judgment about which way the matter should go.
My last question, Chairman, would be what is the view of Crick Parish Council on this resolution? Could the local member perhaps tell us?
Do you want to answer that? So you know, Councillor.
At this moment, there hasn't been a parish council meeting which has considered it.
I can perhaps assist in that I've spoken to the chairman of the Crick Neighbourhood Planning Group, who I understand is the deputy chair of the parish council. I wrote to the parish clerk when this issue came up, and having talked it through, she was entirely understanding of what was proposed and raised no objection to it.
It does actually protect them, doesn't it, in a sense? But it's unusual for you to say council home, that's an unusual one. There are a lot of neighbourhood plans, it's an unusual one. Okay, everyone happy with that? Are you happy? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Just come back to the significant point. The protection they get is that the boundary of the business area means that cannot grow beyond that boundary easily, and that's greater protection, I think, to the village than not putting that boundary around that. And I hope that we can persuade them to accept that argument, but I'm sure we will.
Thank you. So, members, this is a resolved item. Are you happy to support it?
Agreed.
Thank you. Second one, Councillor Chandler, is review of open space sport and recreation strategy.
Thank you, Chairman. This has come quite timely, as those who were at the planning committee last week will realise that in the discussion of the proposed development on the Northampton College land, reference was made to Sport England having raised an objection to that plan because they thought that there was insufficient open space sport and recreation ground. And they made reference to the fact that we have a strategy, but it's somewhat dated. It's not out of date, but it is somewhat dated. And so, because it's 6 years since that report was published, which means that it's near 8 years since the audit work was done, we think it's now necessary to review this work. In some respects, little has changed because open space becomes open space in perpetuity, but there has been some changes, and in particular there have been changes to the access to facilities with the changes to some of the schools, because they've become out of local authority control, become free spirits, as it were, if that's an appropriate term to use for a school. Then it means that they can make their own decisions about who can access the facilities and when. So we think it's time to have this review, and that we are concerned to make sure that we can establish appropriate standards for quantity and quality of open space and sports facilities. It is intended, I'm now on page 54 at the top, it is intended that this work is carried out with neighbouring authorities, South Northamptonshire and Northampton Borough, because they're all working on their Part 2 development plans to supplement the core strategy. This will enable us to benefit from the economies of scale and reduce the cost to this council of this review, we hope. As I said, Sport England raised an objection, and part of their view was that the existing open space study is not up to date. That's not our view. It's dated but not up to date. One of the things that is often raised in this area is what happens with how does the management and maintenance of open space covered. We have a policy, a strategy to deal with that. It is also important to remember that the availability and access to open space and sports and recreation facilities is absolutely vital to ensure the well-being and mental health of our people. So we need to make sure that we have adequate facilities with adequate access. And so that's the background, and in order to do that, we're asking that, or recommending that £25,000 be released to represent our contribution to the joint effort, which will be carried out by the joint planning unit, such as it is. So the figures are there if you're interested. It's been out to tender. The highest scoring tender does not mean the most expensive one, by the way. As you see in the figures there, it says the cost of the highest scoring tender, that's the one that scored most highly against the requirement. So there is this computer model called the Facilities Planning Model, which Sport England have, which we can use to help with the derivation of the strategy, as it were. So that's basically it, I think, Chairman, unless anyone...
Councillor Chandra, thank you. You've got one recommendation before you. Any comments? Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I welcome this. I think obviously it looks like it's much needed, and our existing strategy has been around a while. And I think it will be very useful, I presume it will be, for the development of neighbourhood plans. I mean, imagine it will have a role as individual neighbourhoods to develop their own planning documents. I just did wonder, I think it would have been helpful if we'd been able to see it, the brief for the study, or something more substantial, because it seems to be, I think it's very interesting, and I can look at the existing strategy, but it would be very helpful just to have a bit more to go on, I think. And I wondered if we could ask who did actually get the tender, since it looks like it has been awarded now. And then my final question was just a query about the relationship between this and the Settlements and Countryside Local Plan. I think somewhere in the report it suggests that the outcome of this work will underpin the Settlements and Countryside Local Plan. But I just wondered about the timescales. You know, if there's a recommendation from this strategy, for example, to develop a linear corridor around Daventry, presumably nothing can happen until the Settlements and Countryside Local Plan is enacted. So I just wondered, you know, what the anticipated timescale would be and what the actual relationship between the two documents might ultimately be.
This will inevitably be affected, Chairman, by the fact that this work will be done jointly, but the Settlement and Countryside Local Plan will be an individual plan for this authority. So there is that liaison that has to be carried through. I'm not myself aware of the detail of the document that was used to invite tenders or the result of tender exercise, but I'm sure somebody behind you will be able to fill those gaps. The timing is very, very difficult to pin down. Lots of people are asking for lots of very good and sufficient reasons. Where is our Part 2 local plan? Why haven't we got one? Well, we haven't got one because we haven't finished doing it yet. We haven't finished doing it yet because it takes quite a long time to do. And it's not helped by the fact that we are still dealing with a large number of speculative development applications with a reduced resource because we're having difficulty filling posts. But, you know, every effort will be made to make sure that things do work together, because it doesn't make sense any other way.
Thank you. Simon, just want to add anything to that?
Chairman, if Councillor Campbell would like to see a copy of the brief, I would imagine we can provide it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ernest.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for allowing me to speak again. I was going to ask about the timescale as well, and that question has already been answered. In other words, there isn't an answer yet, but some indication of a target would be helpful, and we're all very disappointed about how long the settlement of the cliffside plan is going to take. It would be nice to know that this is not going to take quite as long. I think it's important for the reasons that Councillor Chancellor has already indicated. It's very important because of the well-being of communities. And I think it's very timely because we do have all of these applications, particularly in rural areas, and we have an expanding population, and we have to be ready to have the facilities there in order to deal with that.
Very much indeed, and I mean, obviously the joint core strategy took 8 years, Councillor, and that's, and we don't want to go through that again. There's many councils across this land who are still going through that process. It's a very lengthy and expensive one, and obviously clearly in the sentence, the countryside plan we'll do as soon as we can. I know both the officers and the lead member will follow that through. So we share your concern, but obviously it is important to save for the future growth of the district. So we'll follow this through. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just an observation, really. I assume that when we done this policy 6 years ago, that there was a map of where the open spaces were, and if things have come through to planning, why, if they disappear, why can they not just be crossed off the map? And the only reason I'm thinking is the college, Sport England, I assume what they mean by it being out of date was the land, the football fields above Fords, obviously has now been built on, so that disappeared. So I assume that's what they mean on that area, that it has become out of date, where, in which case we just cross it out the map and delete it off. You know, it's something, could it not be as simple as that? Once the planning application comes through, we know that's disappeared, you know, it's just continuously updated.
Sorry, can it be simple, sir?
Regretfully not. If it was that simple, Mr. Corbyn would do it that way. The process of carrying out this kind of study involves an assessment of what the public want to need, and that varies over time, as well as an assessment of a whole range of facilities. Yes, open space, but also all kinds of indoor sporting facilities, and we can't readily track all of those. So it's a combination of the need and demand as against the provision, which identifies whether you have a supply, a surplus or a deficit in each area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ball.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. A couple of comments. Drayton Ward, Councillor Randall Ward, in fact, probably got 95% of all the sport and recreation facilities in the town. Just a comment, it means absolutely nothing. Daventry going forward during the during our growth period and at the start in 2002, 2004, going forward with master plans, etc. If you go back to that period, 2002-04, and you look at the public open space available now in Daventry, it is of the biggest proportion that we've ever had. If you take on board, you know, the areas in and around the country park, adjacent to the Grand Union Canal, and shortly stretching up to the Grand Union Canal from the country park. So open space is open space, and when you look at an aerial view of the town, there are probably 12 very green, very open spaces, which I've often used the word sterile, purely and simply because they're not used. So, you know, when we have this report, and I'll ask the strategic portfolio holder if we can pass it on, to differentiate between sporting open space and the recreational public open space. Thank you, Chairman.
Let's go. Before we come back to that in a minute, Councillor Hills.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I fully support having a review. I mean, when we look at 2009 up to now, it does need updating. And I look at it wearing my portfolio hat, sport and recreation, because we have been, if you like, in a growth situation for quite a few years now in what we do, sport and recreational wise. There is no doubt about that. When you look at our summer programme that's being held this year, it's the best that we've had, and we continue year on year to try and bring things forward on that. And as regards one comment that Councillor Paul made, which I think is correct, there are now areas that were previously used for sport, etc., that aren't being used, which is unfortunate. But we have a situation today where we are moving forward in sport. We prove this when we look at our sports awards and things like that. We are getting other activities involved that weren't prime sports, such as sailing and things like that that are coming through at the awards. So I welcome that. I want it to grow. I want our activities to grow, which we have managed to do year on year with our summer programme, etc. And the unfortunate part about it is that now we have a situation where, in some cases, there aren't so many clubs participating as there were a few years ago. So one of the things that came up at the college was, i.e., the amount of sporting open spaces that were available. But when you look at football pitches, quite frankly, we've got Burton's Meadow, which had 2 pitches, no longer in use. The fish ponds, which had 2 or 3 pitches, no longer in use. The headlands that was available, and Browns Road. Now, I would like to see all those full. And they're not. The clubs aren't coming forward in many cases, but you have got some individual clubs, like the rugby club, what they're doing there. When we went down there to the dinner that they had, which Wendy was off on a hen night, I know, which I understand she enjoyed. But these are the sort of things that we've got to be looking at. It's not just what we as a council can do. We have to look sometimes at what the clubs and those organisations can do. There's been a change, I think, when you look overall in the number of volunteers that you can get towards clubs and things. I was involved, I'm not going to mention any names, in trying to start a youth club in an area. And we went out to the parents and we didn't get one reply. We then went out to the grandparents and we had about a dozen replies. So there is a change in attitude and a change in people now not always wanting to contribute to sport, but with our summer camps and things, they could be oversubscribed. And that is the situation that we're at. So I do welcome this. We do need to have an up-to-date situation and see where we're going, what we're looking at for the future from my portfolio point of view.
Well done to you in your portfolio. There's an awful lot going on across the district, so it's very pleasing to see as well. Thanks for that. Councillor Guildford.
I take a pragmatic view in that I think it's important that we get a document up to date. Correct me if I'm wrong, it's that when we assess the needs, we'll be able to identify what's needed within the district, but you'll also be able to use the document, possibly, to apply for external funding or something to bring it into the district when you're proving a need. So it's important that we have an up-to-date document.
Thanks for that, Joe. Thank you, Christine. And back to you, and also a question from Councillor Paul.
Yes. I welcome all these contributions. Thank you. That's very helpful. Councillor Paul is quite right. There is a difference between publicly accessible open space and accessible sports and recreation facilities. I'm sure you'll be pleased, as you all will, to know that the planning committee and the planners within the district council, when engaging with developers at pre-application stage, always make sure that developments of any size contain or include a suitable amount of publicly accessible open space, because that's important to the development of community. Sports and recreation facilities, now that's an interesting one. I didn't know, because I don't live in Daventry, that there were lots of facilities that have fallen into disuse, perhaps. I see see that there are opportunities for clubs and organisations to work together to better those spaces and make full use of them. Obviously what you don't want is a football club to say, well, that's our patch, no one else is allowed to go near it, and when we're not playing football because it's the summer, then the grass grows. Let's make full use of that. I think back to my own situation where we have a sort of village green approach, which is the cricket pitch in the summer and the football pitch in the winter. Now, that doesn't suit all players, it's not good enough, but I'm sure there are opportunities for clubs and organisations to work together, and if we can help each other to make that happen, I think we should. But I think that there is a lot to be recommended within this. All we're recommending at this stage is that the money be released to enable this review to be carried out.
We look forward to the outcome of that review.
Yes.
Okay. Are we happy to accept the recommendation?
Great.
The last one then is the community infrastructure levy.
Yes, we say the most interesting one till last, I think. Community infrastructure levy. I'll come back to the recommendations in a minute. We've been working at this for over 3 years now, 3.5 years I think. There's a list there showing some of the significant events that have happened in that time. Community infrastructure levy was introduced by government, and we have been working towards how we might make it work to our advantage. The latest point that we reached was that we had a draft charging schedule which had been through Strategy Group and Council. We had a thought for a Regulation 123 list of themes, although that's not binding in the same way. And we had thought about an instalment policy for those who claim that because it's going to take them a long time to get the money for building 4,000 houses on church fields, then they should be allowed to pay the still in the instalment. That kind of thing. We also had the opportunity to consider whether or not we should have an exceptions policy or exceptions list, and we decided that we shouldn't. No one should be allowed to escape. So, community infrastructure levy then, it is, could be adopted by this council, and the effects of that are indicated in the paper. The draft charging schedule that we produced was after consultation sent for public examination. The public examination was carried out by somebody who happened to be a member of the planning inspectorate. That wasn't a requirement, and it was scheduled to last for 3 days between the 15th of May. It actually lasted for 3 hours, which probably says quite a lot for the quality of the documentation that had been submitted, and also because one of the points of having the public examination was that people who had represented a view during the consultation were enabled to attend the public examination and make their view known. Only 2 people did, and they didn't really have anything to complain about that. They had other views to express which were probably not entirely relevant. Community infrastructure levy, if adopted, would mean that any development would be classified as to which charging zone it fell into, whether it was residential urban, residential rural with not enough houses to reach the affordable housing threshold, or retail, and we suggested what we would charge. It's a charge per square metre of additional floor space. Some people have tried to refer in the past to this being similar to a roof tax. It's actually worse than that, it's a floor tax. So that if you've got a multi-storey building, you have to pay on all of the floors, not just the roof. So it's the gross internal area. There are simple rules. If it's under 100 square metres of additional space, that it's not a new dwelling, in other words an extension, then SIL doesn't apply. It doesn't apply to affordable housing. It doesn't apply to self-built housing. That's to encourage people to build their own homes. And it doesn't apply to certain charitable organisations. you can see from the paperwork, the draft charging schedule that we submitted was not entirely accepted and agreed by the examiner at the public examination. The public examiner's report, which is included in the documentation, makes a particular representation that the proposed rural residential rate for schemes at or above affordable housing, the threshold should be reduced from our proposed £150 per square metre to £65 per square metre in order that it doesn't put the overall development of the area at risk. In other words, there's a viability and cost bleeding here. Now, it's an aside here because I'm still not clear myself, and many people aren't, whether the affordable housing threshold is 5 or 10, because our policy says it's 5. There has been a ministerial statement that says they think it ought to be 10, but that was one of Sir Eric Pickles' famous statements, which, you know, the law according to Eric Pickles, they don't necessarily form the law until it's accepted as the law. So that there are challenges possible there, depending on how we decide to apply that. You will see on page 60 of your papers the proposed table 2, for the charging schedule as amended by or as recommended for amendment by the examiner. So we now have the ability to adopt SIL. Why would we want to do that? Because it's not compulsory. Well, the points are there. It's clear and non-negotiable, so that adds certainty to the cost to the developer and also to the funding that the council is going to receive. So that it's good from that point of view. It provides funds for the council to manage the impacts of development in a flexible and strategic way. Without SIL, the council's ability to manage impacts of development would be substantially weakened. Key items of infrastructure would not be able to be delivered without SIL. I'll come to that point in a bit more detail in a moment. SIL rates can be revised, so if the construction business picks up as it's anticipated, so that the money is available to the developer and the profit margins and so on go up, we're allowed to revise the charging schedule accordingly. So, whereas planning obligations, the only chance you have, you can negotiate a revision of a planning obligation if you're a developer, but only downwards, which doesn't necessarily suit our best benefit. So there is this specific but important individual issue, which is referred to halfway down page 61, and that's the Daventry Development Link Road, otherwise known as the Floor-Weedon Bypass. It's considered unlikely that NCC would proceed with this if we don't adopt SIL. So it's a sort of, you're open to make your own decision, but be aware of the consequences. On balance, the council, there are risks associated with SIL, of course. You might not raise enough money to do all the things that you need to do. Fixed nature means it takes precedence over other costs, so it could limit site-specific mitigation in some way. There is therefore within the paperwork a clear recommendation that SIL should be adopted by the council. And the consequences of that, or alongside of that, I don't think I need to go too much into the detail elsewhere, is that the recommendation says that the community infrastructure levy charging schedule, Appendix A, should be approved and take effect from the 1st of August. The strategy group recommend that to council. Council meets on the 30th of July, which gives them time to approve it before the 1st of August, which is always nice. That the interpretive note to the SIL charging schedule set out as Appendix B, that's the one to make it clear what kind of development you're building, whether it's retail, domestic accommodation or whatever. That the exceptional circumstances relief should not be applied to Daventry District. We don't think there's a reason to do that. that the Regulation 123 list be approved. Remember, the Regulation 123 list is not in any particular order of priority, and it can be reviewed and adjusted, and that we should approve the instalment policy, and that the SIL programme, which is a sort of where we are now, what we might do as a result of adopting SIL, should be revised as indicating that paperwork. Of course, for you to recognise the revision, you would need to be familiar with the older version, but if you want, I think that information is available within the chart. So I think I've said enough, Chairman, to stimulate discussion. Those are the recommendations, 6 of them, that I placed before.
Well, thank you indeed, Councillor Trafford there. On the point of county council, though, I just want to say without our involvement in the link road, it wouldn't be happening. That's a fact. And obviously we're delighted to be able to make that happen, which without us it wouldn't be happening. So it's a very important point to raise. So, Councillor Osborne.
This scenario, you get the flash developer then that has to pay SIL after the 1st of August if adopted. Then the same developer comes along and says, we can't afford though in the package the 30% affordable housing. We want to drop that to 9% because we've got to pay this SIL. They've got to pay the SIL, but they can argue the affordable housing percentage. They can now, and I'm sure they will do afterwards. So the fact that we're taking SIL, we're getting the SIL, but are we going to lose it, Chairman, in another way? I.e., developers are going to look for a lower percentage affordable housing or a lower percentage of anything that they did before that is still negotiable besides SIL.
So what you're saying, Steve, is Section 106 is now negotiable, as we know. Affordable housing normally suffers when they negotiate downwards.
Yes.
So, Alan?
Well, 2 points. You've made one of them, that Section 106 has always been open to negotiation. The other point, if they reduce the amount of affordable housing, they've increased the amount of not affordable housing, and they'll have to pay SIL on that.
That's the point, because we'll have to pay SIL.
But, okay, so the second part then is, okay, they can, is there more incentive though for a developer, because he's got to pay SIL, to argue the 106 and pay less in 106 monies, in effect, to be so that they can pay the extra SIL money?
Sorry?
I think it may be helpful to comment here. You're absolutely right to say risk, and it's identified as a risk in the report, and the portfolio holder has drawn your attention to it. However, we think it's a risk which is minimal, because the whole point of the SIL setting regime, including the inspectors trawling over our numbers, is to make sure that what we do enables us to deliver policy-compliant development, which includes affordable housing. The reason he has reduced our proposed rural rate in particular is because he believes that will enable us to deliver affordable housing. And having gone over numbers, we are satisfied that is the case. Of course, developers will challenge and they will be responded to robustly as they are now, but we don't believe the risk is any higher in a SIL world than in a non-SIL world.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I had exactly the same concerns as expressed by Councillor Osborne. I think it was recognised widely when SIL was originally mooted that the risk, one of the big risks, was the impact on affordable housing, and it's identified as Simon has said several times in the report and in the planning perspective report. We're on to delivering on our supply of affordable housing as it is, and the government seems intent on destroying the ability of housing associations to build any more affordable housing with various policy announcements. So I just wanted to reiterate my concern that, I do think it's a slightly more dangerous world with SIL in terms of providing affordable housing, it seems to me. And I wanted to ask the administration what we're doing to mitigate the potential effects of diminishing our supply of affordable housing. The other concern I had was the reduction in the total amount for redevelopment or development of bus services. I wondered why the development of services was targeted for a reduction in SIL spending. I think it was a large strategy group that Councillor Morgan identified that Daventry was we had the lowest per capita reduction in carbon emissions of similar local authorities in the county, and one of the reasons given was the impact of major roads and traffic on them. So it would seem unfortunate, I think, if we were mitigating our ability to reduce those carbon emissions further and to make, to supply a very good public transport system. I think bus services are so important. So I just wanted to unpick that a bit as well, please.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. Do you want to just touch upon the last point there?
Happy to, Chairman. I think if members refer to page 79, which is the SIL programme, in the middle block, post adjustments, second block down, which I think is right on the credit, you can see in the total column on the far right the total effect of adjustments on each of the headings. What there is a £2 million reduction on the Daventry development liquor. That's actually referred to in the committee report, in that we had 14 million in the programme previously. We're reducing it to the minimum we've agreed with NCC, which is 12. There's a £5 million reduction for Northampton North West Bypass and a £1.7 million reduction for developed bus services. So in terms of, if you like, the proportionality of the approach in terms of forms of transport, in fact major roads have taken a substantially larger hit than bus services. The other practical point is that when you look at the back end of the programme currently, which we needed to do to make everything balanced, there isn't actually much else there. And therefore, it was necessary to deal with that. It doesn't mean, obviously, this can't be reviewed in the future, I'm sure it will be, but that was simply how the thing was made to add up.
Thank you, Simon. On the other point, Councillor Campbell, about the issue of affordable housing, it's a big issue across the country, actually. We always find there's only so much money in the pot, and when people have large developments in particular, developers will always try and negotiate down. That's the way of life, I suppose, but also representatives of the community, which we all are as councillors, we fight in the corner communities and try and get the most benefit we can out of Section 106 currently. The great thing about SIL, what used to be called a roof tax actually, is actually developers have certainty as well about their overall expenditure on infrastructure, which should help them plan their stuff, but no doubt they'll still try and knock it down as they do in Section 106. It's a concern to me. I've been concerned about the affordable housing for some time, but if you want to get stuff in, as we know in parts of our district when we're fighting hard to get infrastructure in, it tends to be that element that suffers most. Maria?
Thank you, Chairman. Just coming back on Councillor Chandler's point about the affordable housing, is it 5, is it 10, and other points about affordable housing. Members will be aware that there was a recent appeal decision where an inspector surprised us by saying you can't have affordable housing because this is only 5 units on this site. Well, we, just so members are aware, we have actually put in a challenge to that appeal decision because the 5-unit, 10-unit thing is national planning policy allows us to set that, and that's compliant with our local plan, and it's only in the subsequent guidance from government that it talks about 10. So we are challenging that, and we will of course let you know the outcome of that when we find out how it goes.
Another challenge. Okay, thank you for that, Maria. We've got some names coming up. Next one is Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you again, Chairman. I think the message is certainty. When the developer opened his eyes and said this is a nice place to go, there is a certainty there. 106 agreements, there are those that think that, oh well, a development's going to go on and the 106 agreement will be signed the day after the planning committee approved the resolution. However, 106s can go on for a month, 6 months, 3 or 4 years. So, with the SIL, there is a certainty. With regard to affordable housing, there is always going to be a question. There was a question of viability when the 106 agreements were there. I don't see that having the SIL will do anything other than that. But the other message, and my colleague broached upon the subject, is that the SIL is directly linked to the Daventry link road, and the link road is absolutely crucial to our town development. It's crucial to the development of church fields. It's crucial to keep our 5-year housing land supply over 5 years. It's crucial to our town centre. My colleague on the left here has already commented to me on such matters that, you know, without the link road, so much can't happen in Daventry. I see this as a way forward. The word certainty has been used on more than one occasion, and I would ask the committee to recommend it. I do have one question though, Chairman. On page 77, there is a scale there in amounts that have to be paid after day periods. When those periods become due, the SIL money could be divided into 15% for parish or 25% parish, 85% coming to DDC. Will that apply to these incremental, well, that's a big word for me, incremental payments?
Okay, sorry.
Chairman, yes.
Yes.
Thank you for that explicit answer.
That's what answer's all right. Thank you. Thanks, Simon. Thank you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question, probably in my resources portfolio role. The recommended SIL figure in one area was £135 per square metre. So 150 reduced down to 65. On projections, do we have any idea what that reduction might cost in overall terms, over what period, and what impact it might have on your ability to be able to produce certain infrastructure projects?
Simon.
Well, let me just give Simon an introduction. First of all, first thing to say is it's actually not possible to give hard and fast answer to that because there are so many unknowns in terms of what will happen in terms of government changes, what will happen in terms of development change. However, it is my understanding that work has been done at very short notice, I have to say, by Simon and his team to work out the effects of SIL on some of the projects that we know about, because that's helpful for people who hang their hats on, as it were. And Simon will perhaps be able to elaborate on the answer to your question as to whether or not we can answer what the reduction overall is brought about by that recommended change. Remember, this is the rural development, which is a small part of the development overall in the area, because the Joint Core Strategy says let's keep most of it as urban, quite sensibly, I think. But nevertheless, perhaps Simon has now had time to gather his thoughts and will be able to respond.
Thank you. It's not an easy question to answer because there are so many different variables in flux. If you simply held all other assumptions constant from the last time we approved the SIL programme and varied at that rate, the loss is £15 million over the life of the SIL programme. However, we have also, in the intervening period, had developments not become liable for SIL and others we believe will be liable for SIL. We have changed the assumptions of house sizes, which makes a massive difference because we now have quite good evidence of what developers are actually building, and they're building bigger houses than we thought, which pushes the amount back up. So it's not a massively meaningful figure, but we've lost on allowing for all of those things about £3 million over the life of the SIL programme, which has been allowed for in the spreadsheet, in the table in the report. So we're confident, as far as one can be, that what is listed can be delivered, subject to the economy and everything else that will evolve over time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, Chris. Councillor James.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My comment is, as well as bringing certainty, which Councillor Paul mentioned, I thought the rates for the urban areas and the rural areas above the affordable housing threshold were quite reasonable. I was quite amused at the way it was all worked out. It wasn't one of my students and former students at GBA Green did it. But I thought they were quite reasonable. And it's for that reason I'm not too concerned about affordable housing. There are a couple of reasons. One, over the last 2 or 3 years, talking to developers and talking to people who have bought new houses from new developments, there is a resentment growing up between those who own their own home and pay a mortgage and those who are living in affordable housing. And it is in some instances, Upton is the classic example, is building a great resentment. I can quote other developments too. So that's one reason I'm not too concerned about it, because less affordable housing means improved marketability. And given that Daventry is proposing, once we get this relief note to be done, proposing 4,000 houses or more, there'll be plenty of houses to buy in Daventry at quite reasonable prices, especially compared with paying rent, given that there are government schemes to help people get onto the housing ladder. So I think, this term affordable housing, which at one time meant affordable to buy as well, has somehow suddenly become social housing, as it were. That affordable housing means rented housing. What we should be doing is encouraging youngsters to get on, particularly youngsters, to get on the housing ladder. And I think, given the fact that we are going to build a lot of houses in Daventry, there are a lot of houses going to go on villages in the next few years, the larger villages, we know that. And given that these sill rates, especially for the urban area and for the rural area above the affordable housing criteria, are quite reasonable, I think it should work out quite well. My only misgiving is the developments of less than 5, where the rate is, say, is £200 a metre. So if you're building a say, 200 square metre house, that's quite a lot of money, 40,000 quid, unless I put my water next up. I think developers will balk at that, and we may well see less little clusters of 4 or 5 executive homes in the future.
That's a fair point, Vice Mayor.
Developers may well consider that, hey, we could just build one-off for somebody, custom built, self-trade. That might be. So I did think that was a bit excessive. I thought that before these figures came out. In the same way as I'm thinking the others were quite reasonable. But anyway, I would certainly recommend this.
Very interesting, David. I mean, obviously that's the point where you looked at the evidence of that in due course. Councillor Osborne.
I don't support what my colleague is just saying. I think you'll be aware I'm a fairly right-wing conservative with probably left-wing views on housing. There is only one cake, and all of a sudden, out of the cake, there is a big chunk called silk going to come out of it. That's going to come out of it first, before you get to your 106 agreements and everything. So that's going to come out. The cake already exists at the moment, and the chunks are coming out of it. We are noticing a reduction in affordable housing percentages. People are negotiating down because we want other bits enlarged in the 106. So along comes the sill bit and takes a bigger grab out, that's going to leave less. Now, to my mind, that will most certainly, although we can negotiate till the cows come home, and we will do, and we'll bang every drum possible, that will lead to less affordable housing. That's number one. That's my number one comment, and I support that view. And the second one is, out of, let's say, the 100% of sill money that we would receive in a year, what percentage would you envisage going to the parishes and also to the town council, and what percentages remaining with the district council?
Well, that's 25% you've got a neighbourhood plan and 15% you don't.
No, out of the total. That will actually happen like that, will it? In other words, I represent a village that doesn't have a neighbourhood plan and doesn't want a neighbourhood plan, and we recognise we'll get a low
figure.
but we will get that figure, will we?
Yes.
On anything after August the 1st?
Yes.
Most definitely.
Yes.
Okay?
So I thought it was the first instance of submission or decision. Decision. I just wanted to clarify as well.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Liz?
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Going back to the 1, 2, 3 list, we haven't got anything down for health. And we've got all this growth and we need larger surgeries. And it just occurs to me there was a very good reason, wasn't there, when we wrote that 1, 2, 3 list. Can anybody remember why we didn't include health?
Someone's got a very good memory.
Chairman, I'm happy to comment. The reason really is twofold. One is that when NHS England, or whichever the NHS body was that responded, I do forget that now, but certainly the NHS body that responded, they specifically said that they looked for a certain amount per unit once local capacity had been absorbed, which means inherently you're not talking about using SID, you're talking about using planning obligations, because SID is undifferentiated and runs across the entire district. The practical issue is we're fairly confident that we can capture what we need to for primary health care via the 106 system, because we can sit within the five development limit for specific projects, extending a surgery or whatever it happens to be. Now, if we find that's a problem in future, we can do it again. The other reason is simply that the more we put into the SIL charge, the less we're able to collect from Section 106, because the SIL charge is fixed. So the more headings we have, the less you can collect from 106, but you don't get any more from SIL. So it's a balance of those considerations.
So, if, for instance, in Woodford we suddenly have some more development, when we get outline planning permission applied for, then we can still put in for a Section 106 for increased health capacity?
Chairman, yes, that's exactly correct. Provided it's not on the 1, 2, 3 list, then the planning obligation system operates as before with the pooling limits in place, but provided we're smart about that and we're doing a bit of thinking about how to run this, and we specify quite clearly what the project is. If it's extending with health centre according to this plan, then that's a project and we can have 5 developments that feed it. What we can't do is what we did in the old days, we have very general headings because then we'll get stuck. But as long as we're smart, we should manage to deliver that kind of thing through 106 still.
NHS England now are more in tune with the growth agenda and now saying they want to engage at the local level, as we're doing in this district, on that very point, Simon, because before the money used to just go into the black pot of the NHS and wouldn't necessarily come back into the area it came from. So I mean that's the point where you have a specific reason. We've seen already in this district you can actually get some success by focusing on those reasons. Was it so? Sorry, Joe.
Can I just ask, because there's been an awful lot of development at Woodford, and there could have been an opportunity to have something at Woodford, but because it hadn't been included in the Section 106s of Woodford for health, that means there hasn't been any monies collected in the past. Is that correct?
I mean, what ends up in a 106 essentially starts with the planning application process, the initial consultation. So, I mean, we're constantly providing training and support to parishes, because actually there's some really good recent examples of development, for example, in Brixton, where they're providing a brand new surgery. So, you know, we're encouraging parishes to respond and say if that's.
But just come back on that, it doesn't help us resolve the situation. We've missed the boat with the developers.
That's right.
All that development.
That would have to have been evidence, though. It would have, you know, you would have to be in a situation where there is evidence that there is. You can't use Section 106 to solve a current problem. You can only use it to address the need that arises as a result of the new development. And that's sometimes where they're certainly not all Section 106s include health contribution, because there's often capacity.
So how are we going to solve it?
We've got evidence.
Yeah. So future applications.
Future applications you should be straight in there.
And if you can get more, if you can negotiate with the developer and get more as a parish, that's happening too these days.
Thanks, Joe. Is that Abigail?
Like, just a very quick comeback to Councillor James' comment about affordable housing, which I felt I couldn't let go. And I heard him say that he wasn't too concerned about affordable housing. Well, earlier on this evening, we all agreed a community engagement strategy, which gave a much bigger role for individual councillors and promoted their engagement with their local community. And I just wondered if Councillor James might be interested in talking to some of the hundreds of people on the housing register in the district as part of that engagement process to find out how they feel about the provision of affordable housing.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Warren raised, I felt, an interesting point at a meeting not so long ago. Perhaps he would like to elaborate with regards to certain developments that started under the 106, and the rest of the development will be under the guidance of SIL. So how does that work? I mean, Councillor Warren will no doubt word it better than I.
Well, what I was asking at that particular time was where development is going through under 106 and SIL came into force, but it was answered quite eloquently from Simon at the time that the 106 stands and the SIL does not come into play, unfortunately, because it then becomes like a double dip, like a double charge on the developer, which is deemed to be unfair.
Why did you have so many speculative applications in the last couple of years? The new SIL was coming. Right, back to you, Alan.
Yeah, I think we've had an interesting discussion, and it could go on, but I suggest that we've probably covered everything. I just wanted to draw attention to another point. On top of the benefit of the certainty that SIL provides, the regulations do permit using alternative sources of funding ahead of SIL and paying yourself back from SIL later on because of the certainty that you know that money's coming. And we're exploiting that with the DDL. And that's the kind of thing that just makes life a lot easier in many ways. So again, I recommend that we make this recommendation.
Thank you. Very generous. Councillor Goff, you want a quick word?
I was only going to say that on the mortgage and the rent, the mortgage to buy property is coming down, and the rent is going down.
Councillor White has been very, very generous here.
But it just follows on from the comment I just made a minute ago. I just wanted to clarify, does that still stand with the applications where you've got a fixed, like a hybrid application, i.e. an application that's already been approved, but then you've got outline application? Does the SIL does not actually apply to the outline, or is it still going to be the 106 attributed to the outline application?
Chairman, yes. An outline permission is still a planning permission, and therefore it locks you into the previous regime.
Thank you. Can we agree the 6 recommendations before us?
Agree.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. You're great now. Thank you indeed. Move on now to housing and environmental health issues. Allocation scheme issue consoled. Councillor Warren.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to seek approval to consult on a number of changes to the allocation scheme, which was adopted in July 13 and revised in December 14. All local housing authorities are required by law to have a scheme detailing the council's policy on how the application for affordable housing within the district will be assessed and prioritised on the housing register. The council's allocation scheme was adopted by full council in July 13, with a revision made in December 14. Since this time, a number of issues have arisen which require a revision of the allocation scheme. The introduction of new legislation which provides a legal basis for the government's proposed right to move for existing social tenants for work-related reasons, which is covered in 4.1. The regulations allow existing social tenants from outside the district who wish to move into the district for work-related reasons to form a local connection. Work-related reasons include those who already have permanent work or apprenticeships within the district, and those that have an offer of employment and or apprenticeship within the district. The DDC's allocation scheme already allows applicants to establish a local connection through work in the district. This is irrespective of whether they are a social tenant in another authority or not, but excludes those on apprenticeships. This policy is therefore partially compliant with the new legislation, and in addition to the new right to move criteria, would ensure that the council was fully compliant with the legislation. Responding to issues of low demand property through the proposed inclusion of a low demand property protocol, this is covered in Appendix E on the policy. And for the purpose of this protocol, properties are classed as low demand where there is a small or non-existent waiting list for the property. On occasions there are either no bids or no suitable bids from applicants on certain properties. The properties therefore remain empty, leaving the affordable housing provider with a void and a loss of rental income. This protocol seeks to address this issue by putting in place a series of actions for affordable housing providers to try and tackle the issue. If these are not successful, a local letting arrangement can be put in place. To clarify approval arrangements for the local letting arrangements and make which are covered in 4.3, it has been identified that it would be useful to add clarity to the process of authorisation of local letting arrangements. These are permitted variations from the normal operations of the housing allocation schemes. It is proposed to take the opportunity also to correct a small number of typographical errors and to make minor improvements to the presentation. It is proposed that the consultation will be focused on affordable housing providers working within the district. This is because the changes are largely to address the legislative requirement, where the only issue is to how best to implement it or affect the arrangements between the council and the providers. The consultation will take approximately 4 weeks, starting from the 13th of July 15 and ending on the 7th of August 2015. I ask that it be resolved that the allocation scheme consultation draft be approved for consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. Any questions, comments? So just agreeing the consultation process here. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, pleased to agree. I just wanted to say I think it's really good that we're developing this low demand properties protocol. I think it's been a cause of great frustration for a number of housing associations in the area, so I think it's a really good development.
Thank you. If no other comments, you have to read the resolved item. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Warren. This one is resources issues now. 2 items here. One is Treasury Management Annual Report 2014-15. Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chairman. As the annual report states, the minimum reporting requirements for Daventry District Council's 2014-15 Treasury management activities were the full council should receive the following reports. An annual Treasury strategy in advance of the year, which was received on the 27th of January 2014. A mid-year Treasury update, which was received on the 26th of February 2015. And the annual review, which is the document in front of you. The regulatory environment places a responsibility on members for this review and scrutiny of Treasury management policy and activities. This report is therefore important in that respect, as it provides details of the outturn for Treasury activities and highlights compliance with the Council's policies previously approved by members. The report in general is self-explanatory, although I will bring 3 items to members' attention. Item 4/4.1, capital expenditure. Due to project slippage 2014-15 saw one of the lowest capital expenditures of the Council for some considerable time, the original budget having been reduced from 8.614 million down to 2.26 million. Item 8, Icelandic bank defaults. And this, Chairman, is the last report that will be given with regard to this subject. The Council has now sold its claims against the insolvent estate of Landesbanki for the reasons detailed in the body of the report. The sale means that the Council has recovered 92.76% of the amounts which were originally deposited with LDI in 2007 and 2008. The only investment remaining with the Icelandic institution is with Kaplan, Singer and Freelander. As at the 31st of March, the remaining balance on the original 2 million placed is £55,000, with a final dividend due to be paid in June 2015. This would be a total repayment of 82.25%. The Council has previously received 94p in the pound from the administrators of Heritage Bank. No further dividends were anticipated. However, the Council has been notified that an additional dividend is anticipated to be declared and paid in August 2015. A prudent estimate is the sum will be 4p in the pound. In conclusion to this topic, providing the receipt of the final dividend from Captain Singer and Freelander and the further dividend from Heritable are paid, the Council will have received in total repayment in the region of 92.6% of its original investment. Under the circumstances, a notable achievement. Item 9, Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy 2015-16. Following the financial crisis of 2008, security of the Council's investments was confirmed as paramount, as opposed to achieving an optimum rate of return on those investments. Full Council on the 26th of February 2015 approved Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy, which included the approval of the Council setting its credit criteria for both specified and non-specified investments. At this point, the sovereign rating was set at Fitch rating AAA. For all countries apart from the UK, which was the exception to enable the Council to contribute to deal with the UK institutions in the event of a downgrading of the UK sovereign rate. Whilst economic conditions remain tepid in some regions, the overall state of financial markets and counterparties operating therein has changed markedly since the height of the crisis. In response to regulatory changes, the three rating agencies have made adjustments to their methodologies in an effort to remove any adjustment based upon implied sovereign support. As a result, the emphasis on the sovereign rating within the investment strategy has changed. Treasury advisors, whilst not advocating the removal of a minimum sovereign rating criterion, do suggest that the application of the AAA minimum is not as valid as it was in recent years. Given the evolution of rating methodologies, it's now important to focus on the rating of a single entity. Therefore, after taking into consideration all the information available, it is proposed to change the minimum sovereign rating currently set in the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy from AAA to AA with effect from the 1st of August 2015. This will bring the UK into the asset criteria. This would provide the Council with a depth of diversification whilst maintaining security and liquidity. I therefore ask Strategy Group members to approve the following recommendations. 1. That the Council's Treasury Management activities for the financial year 2015 be noted. And 2. The changes to the 2015-16 Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Can I just ask a question about the KSF? What's that? Money received, was that received in June, the money? Was it received?
Can you check that? Sorry, I'm looking at it.
Sorry.
No, we were told that we should receive it in June and we haven't at today's date.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions for Councillor Long? One point I would like to make on the AA rating, going down a slight rating level by 1A, is that it's presumably still going to be based upon the institution you're going to invest in. Because I just worry a little bit, bearing in mind the history of this, and bearing in mind throughout the world at the moment that things aren't that certain, that, one wants to be as safe as we can do, because our policy was all about safety rather than maximum return. I'd just like that to be taken into account, that we do actually look at institutions rather than just a blanket AA as a starting point.
If I may, I'm not proposing at all to change the criteria, which is very, very strict within our strategy, and that will still be maintained.
That's very clear.
Could I?
Yes, of course.
Jeff, if you actually if you go back to 2008, 2010, and you look at some of the counterparties, the banks would look at Lloyds, NatWest, whoever, you look at them as they were rated AAA then.
Yes.
If you look at the process that we've been through in this country of quantitative easing, the principle of quantitative easing had two elements to it. One, effectively, was to put more money in circulation, and it was hoped that in many ways the banks would use that particular money actually to help small and medium companies to actually develop during a very difficult period. In fact, when you look at it, much of the quantitative easing money actually landed up on the balance sheet of the banks. So in many ways, even though they currently have AA rating, in terms of solidity of the actual institution themselves, they're probably better now than they were when they were triple rated 8 years ago, because of the criteria and the way in which it's been looked at.
Thank you for that. And the other point also is with China's situation at the moment, and they're having to bail out their stock market at the moment to a huge extent.
It's about 30% down.
We don't know how that's going to pan out, and also obviously we're not sure what's going to happen in Europe at the moment. So it's also uncertainty around that's the only point we should be mindful of that.
Indeed, I think the most, Chairman, I think the most important part is that you are actually looking, because of what was done, and the actual liquidity of with the banks that we have now, plus the bottom line rating, you're actually looking at a different entity. They are more solid. Of course, these sort of problems can occur that you've identified, but I think we're in a better position than we were then. But I go totally with what Audrey has said, of course, is that prudence is the order of the day. But equally, with this change, it does also give the council the opportunity for Treasury management to be more diverse in the way it invests while retaining security. That's also good for the council because it's not all in one place.
No, agree with that. Are we happy to agree the two recommendations?
Agree.
The second paper, Council, on is 2015-16 capital revenue budget and medium-term financial plan.
Thank you, Chairman. This report provides an update on the 2015-16 capital and revenue budget and the medium-term financial plan. Further, it seeks to approve to amend the capital programme to reflect slippage requirements of projects from the 2014-15 budgets to that of the 2015-16 budget. It further seeks approval to adjust the general fund revenue budget to reflect the projects outlined in the body of this report. As for the previous report, the document is self-explanatory. However, I would like once again to bring two items to the members' attention. Item 3, Medium-Term Financial Plan, MTFP. 3.28, Strategic Infrastructure and Interest Earning Reserve. To meet the ever-increasing demand brought about by developments across the district needing advanced infrastructure, as we talked about earlier, this as a kickstart, Council agreed to set up a rolling infrastructure earmarked reserve to unblock site developments. The reserve is replenished as described in the body of the report, where 3 of the projects requiring this type of support are also identified. The profiling of these agreements or proposals is such that there would be insufficient funds in the strategic infrastructure earmarked reserve to make the required payments. To address this situation, it's proposed to combine the interest earmarked reserve, which was set up in 2010 to fund future capital projects, with the earmarked reserve. These details are currently shown as separate items at 3.1 of the body of the report in front of us. These are on page 148. The combined reserve will then also be replenished by interest earnings, as well as the sources outlined in the report. It's further proposed that as well as kick-starting developments, that extra external funding the reserve could be used to fund our own capital projects, as was originally envisaged when the interest earmark reserve was established. For members' information, should the two reserves not be combined, monies both from general funds or revenue capital reserve would need to be required. Moving on to the capital programme, item 5.1 of the report, the Rainsbrook Crematorium. The Rugby and Daventry Rainsbrook Crematorium recently completed its first year of trading. This facility has been well received locally following some early misgivings by local residents. As a development on former arable farmland, the new crematorium landscape will inevitably take decades to develop, and there are concerns that this is restricting the initial ability to maximise income potential. To address these concerns, it's proposed to invest in immediate landscaping of the Garden of Remembrance, pond, ashes scattering area and tree of life area. The total amount proposed to invest is £80,000, of which £25,000 is sought from Daventry District Council. Rugby Borough would also make a £25,000 capital contribution, and the Joint Committee would apply 30k of cameo scheme income over 2 financial years. The Joint Committee has recommended this investment to the two councils. Rugby Borough Council estimates potential increase for income of £32,000 per year. Conservatively, it is assumed 50% of this will actually be obtained. Commencing 2016-17, of this DDC would receive 50%. This would show a good return on the investment. In the body of the report, it refers to the cameo scheme. And if I may, Chairman, I'd just like to advise members on what it is. And for this explanation, I must offer my thanks to Simon Bowers, because he managed to provide it in a way that I could understand, and I'm very grateful for that, Simon. Thank you. As a matter of course, when cremations occur, the mercury in dental fillings are burnt and emitted into the atmosphere. Mercury is highly toxic, and therefore there is a national regulatory target to reduce the levels of such emissions eventually to zero. New crematoria such as ours and some older crematoria which have been refitted already fully abate or remove the mercury from the flue gases. Other older crematoria are not yet there. To prevent this creating an unfair position where unabated crematoria get a cost advantage from not having invested in abatement technology, there is a national trading scheme. This allows unabated crematoria to buy rights to emit from crematoria which are abated. The main national trading scheme is called Cameo, to which I refer to in the actual report, and is run by an organisation of the same name. Over time, older crematoria will fit the abatement technology, and thus the value of selling mercury abatement rights will diminish, eventually to zero. Thus Cameo will eventually disappear. With this information to hand, Chairman, I therefore ask members of the strategy group to accept the following recommendations. 1. Capital budgets that require slippage from 2014-15 capital programme to the 2015-16 capital programme be made, and the new bid spend for the Rainsbrook Crematorium be approved. 2. That the revised budget projections incorporated in the medium-term financial plan be approved.
Thanks, Councillor. Are there any questions? Councillor Randall.
Yeah, I've only just got one question. On page 150, second paragraph up from the bottom, it has been identified that despite good performance, some increase. How do they identify that? Do they sort of say, right, okay, if we have more landscape, would you, have your ashes put here? Because a lot of people, even though they go to the crematorium, they don't want their ashes left there. They'll still come back to their cemetery. It doesn't matter how wonderful the crematorium. So I just wondered how they, identify that, because it's not really a question which I won't ask.
Do you know the answer to that question?
Chairman, it is a question you wouldn't ask the bereaved, rather than sensitive, but we can ask and do ask the undertakers who obviously have that relationship with the bereaved. and they feedback very usefully. We also have a very experienced crematorium manager, Michelle Daventry, who has run crematoria in Leicester and down in the southwest and now works for us. And she is able to get us some soft intelligence back, which helps inform us.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
I had exactly the same question, thank you.
Value you two think alike.
Yeah.
And Councillor Lomax.
It's the same.
Speak. I'm a member of the crematorium committee, which is currently its chair. Indeed, it is as Simon's explained. 82% of the cremated remains actually don't stay at the moment at the crematorium. So actually to increase, while we still have Cameo operating, the opportunities for more memorialisation would be very helpful. And it has been said by people who use crematorium, although the crematorium itself is very well liked and has been very popular, the surroundings, I don't know whether anybody went yesterday to the end of the day and actually saw it, but it certainly looks unfinished as far as the landscaping is concerned, and it will only increase the usage of it, the popularity of it, and the income discounts.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, for that. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a beautiful location as well.
It is a beautiful location, and over the years it will become very
Thanks, Councillor Lomax. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I look at the report and slightly tongue-in-cheek, I think, well, not enough people died. We're going to increase our revenue. That's the flippant side of it. The actual side is that when you drive in from Kilsby and you spot the crematorium on the hill, the landscaping to me is of utmost importance. If you go to Brighton, for instance, I know it's miles away, their crematoria is within a ravine and actually is a place of solitude for a lot of the people in that area, purely and simply because it's a beautiful place to sit. It's not morbid, it's beautiful. Banbury Crematorium is also similar. It's beautiful, it's been laid out well. But with regards to crematorium, I am minded that the crematorium in Northampton is very, very tired. It's dated, I think it was built in 1936, if memory serves. I think there is a business opportunity for Daventry to investigate an additional crematorium to the east of our district. I wonder just how long the one in Northampton can keep going. It's certainly archaic in its methods. So perhaps there is a business opportunity there, Chairman, which our officers could hopefully investigate.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. And Councillor Hills.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think we should support this report. I think that the crematorium is an excellent facility. I totally agree with Councillor Lomax's comments about the landscaping. I think that's very relevant. What it does do, it provides, as I say, good facilities for the people of Rugby, but also for the people this side of Daventry District. And I also think that in the long term, it will prove to be an excellent investment.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Are there any more questions? We are in the growth area, of course, remember, the long term, and there's a shortage, and the crematorium in Northampton is very full in many respects, and therefore there's a need for more crematoriums around the world, so who knows what may happen next. Can we read the two recommendations on the paper?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you for your attention this evening. That concludes our meeting. Thank you.